someone speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Welcome in, everybody. Here we are for another live pirate stream, this time on consequences. What you don't know. It will probably hurt you because you don't know. There's a lot of stuff you don't know, though, so it's a long road down the consequences train. Hope everybody had a good week. Polly flew in a little late, so that's why I didn't get my music started exactly the when I like to, but that's okay. We're here. Nothing's bad. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. It's been a busy week. There's a lot more chaos happening as usual. I think the chaos will continue until morale improves or something because yeah, I don't think people are not up with how the world works yet. So until men of action take action, and we'll be covering that. We'll be covering that. So look, I got my Sampal, a nice big bottle. And I've got my Muppet mug. I hope you have one too. It's full of more Sampal because you can't have enough Sampal. Have you considered? You should. You should have one of these mugs so that you consider on a regular basis, in fact. And then I got some nice yerba mate tea in the captain's mug. Very important. Keep me awake. Actually, it's not tea, it's chai, technically. But, yerba mate's good stuff. Very good stuff, I might add. And then I've got my Skull and Crossbones mug as well. And we've got some nice ginger tea in here. So all the mugs. We've got all the mugs. They're all here. And they're all delicious. So, yeah, let's just think about the week a bit. I mean, everything's crazy in the UK. It's gotten completely out of hand, which was inevitable because nobody was taking any action. The US, people want to skirt action and assert, we'll say, judicial powers or something, which is irrelevant and unlikely to work in the long run. Also, people don't know how to read, so it sort of helps them know how to read. The idea of due process is laughable. So it's been pretty wild, and memes are flying, and there's all sorts of consequences from events, and people are starting to realize things that maybe they didn't realize before, and it's kind of crazy. And the wise shipmates will notice that the channel now has channel memberships on. So there's going to be special stuff for channel members, and I had to do that today. Did I do that today? I had to do that today because of something that Google's doing. And then we're in the middle of a channel rebrand, so hopefully all those graphics will be done soon, and not much is really changing. We're just adding for visibility, and fixing some consistency problems across the brands. So That is what's going on. Let's grab our favorite book, because it is in fact our favorite book here, and see what wisdom we can glean from Nassim Taleb's aphorisms here. Uh, Those who have nothing to prove never say that they have nothing to prove. Yeah. Beware of things people say that could never need to be said, because they'd be evident by the consequences. Right. Yeah, it goes with the theme pretty well, actually. So shockingly well. Taleb always seems to deliver somehow. I don't know quite why that is. Maybe aphorisms are good or something. But yeah, let's get started with consequences. So the word consequence originates from the late 14th century, derived from the Old French, exactly the same spelling, right? And Latin, consequentia. It is formed from the Latin verb consequi, meaning to follow after, which combines com, Latin's funny, with together, sequi, to follow. Yeah, so you change the M to an N. That makes sense only in Latin. Initially, it referred to a logical inference or conclusion, but its meaning has expanded to include the, I hate this word, modern sense of result or effect. And in late 14th century, logical inference, conclusion from Old French, consequence, right? Uh, Meaning that which follows from or grows out of any act or course, right? Sense of importance, significance, right? Consequential, right? It's from the notion of being full of consequences. In other words, your actions matter. And not everybody's actions matter the same way, right? I mean, Elon Musk makes a tweet. I make a tweet. His is consequential. Mine is not, right? Like, it's that hard, really. And there's lots of reasons for that. That ability to have that reach and that ability to have that level of influence is the consequence of something else. And then it in and of itself becomes consequential, right? Because it both derived from a consequence of a bunch of hard work and ways of being in the world, and creates consequences. And so that sort of uh, approach through time of understanding how these words are used is really important, because one of the things we've done in the flat world is flatten time down. And so we're just thinking of things saying straightforward without any implications for what the past must have been like, right? Can't derive the whole past, but you can derive interesting things just from the words you're using now to express the present and or the future. So that's good to know. And the thing is, consequences are the non-optional components of reality, right? They are independent of your existence and especially of your will. When we try to will things, we expect not just a certain consequence, but only the consequence we desire. And that's because we have limited minds and we have a personal private perspective, and that is limited. And even if it wasn't, it's hard to see all the consequences of smiling at somebody you don't know. Right? You can't see them in advance. You can measure them after the fact. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. But the thing is, we have this idea that the consequence of this action is going to be this thing. That's part of the video game reality, guys. That's where you get that impression from. Been mimicking it for some of your whole lives, unfortunately, not me. But and then you don't understand that the consequences seem somehow not to cooperate. They don't do just one thing. There isn't just one consequence of an action. And this creates anxiety because your expectation is not matched by what's happening in the world, the consequence, right? And well, it should, right? But taking away the right lesson from this is important. The right lesson is it means that you are wrong about reality. This is why I try to explain to people you need to be extraordinarily careful with people who say you don't or you can't know reality. Okay. To them, I say maybe you can't, but that's a you problem, not a me problem. Right. And they get very upset. And maybe they should get upset. Also, I don't care. They've got their own issues. They can deal with them. I'm not here to deal with their issues for them. Do you have like a bad attitude? Did that ruffle your feathers? They give you a bad attitude, things going wrong for you. Is that a self-fulfilling prophecy, so called? Or is it just consequences of seeing things negatively? See things negatively in the world, you act a little bit more negatively than you ought. People pick up on that. You're the scapegoat. And well, you should be because you're negative. So even if you didn't do that thing, it may be your bad attitude that made the person who did that thing do the thing. I've seen that before. You get rid of the negative guy, everyone's performance improves. Happens all the time in groups, all the time. Cheat on your spouse, divorce, consequence of not enough grace in the world. Mm, indeed. We are all flawed human beings, almost imperfect or, huh. There must be another word for that somewhere. Getting sucked into video games, porn, social media, cat videos, technology has consequences too. Find stimulating thought or conversations around so-called philosophy. Consequence of not enough rote manual labor. You need to get out and you need to do stuff that's boring and find a way in that boringness to resolve yourself, to integrate yourself, your boringness with the rest of you. Then you won't have deep philosophical questions about maybe the meaning crisis is all about a loss of qualia. Who the cares? I mean, grow up. This isn't that hard to fix if you just stop talking about it and fix it. For yourself will do, actually. And these things are everywhere. We cannot do anything, or in fact, we can't just sit around and do nothing without them coming to visit, often far after the initial event, because time is a factor in consequence. And we don't see this, right? Jordan Peterson, no one ever gets away with anything. Ooh, that's what he was talking about. Consequences. That's a scary one. You never get away with anything. I don't know what he's referring to there or if I exactly agree, but consequence confirmed nonetheless. And why is it that people do not understand consequences? Well, first, discernment is always an issue, right? We've talked about discernment before, and everybody lacks it. And what do you think immaturity causes? If you're immature, you lack discernment, right? A 4-year-old doesn't know why you can't have a cookie before dinner, or indeed all the cookies before dinner. And those consequences are so far away, potentially, right? And I've seen this in people that I watched grow up. Like, yeah, they were allowed cookies all the time, and then they're fat later in life. Oh, shocking, right? Shocking. And it's not the fact that they were allowed cookies because cookies make you fat. That's not what happens. That's not how it works. Right? The consequence is they're used to being placated and placating their mood of the moment with treats. And so every time they don't feel well, they eat treats. Consequences indeed. And of course, treats are also bad for you. And so, yeah, you're mollifying your mood at the cost of being 400 pounds. Consequences. And the thing is, without the ability to poetically inform the world, you don't understand complex consequences. And when you live in a world of objective material reality, dissecting things and putting things together randomly, it's because you have rejected a pre existing order to the world into which you were born. And this is just a form of creation denial. You can see it with people who are upset about consequences. And this manifests in all sorts of interesting ways. Oh, I don't think I should be treated differently because I'm gay. It's like, well, but you are different. And so you need to be treated differently. And it's not up to me and it's not up to you. That's going to happen. Oh, we let men into women's sports because they took estrogen and said they were girls. Yes, okay. And then they beat all the girls and the girls got upset because now they can't. Right. You destroyed the order of the world or tried to, and that has consequences. And so when you just carve the world up and try to put it back together some different way, well, why can't we live in a world where everyone just gets along? Because everyone doesn't want to get along. A lot of people want you to do what they want. That includes you towards other people, by the way. That's where all the problems start. They start with you, not other people. They start with you. The consequence of constantly crying out for somebody who's not you to fix something because the climate change documents aren't real, or there's a file with a list of bad people on it somewhere, or whatever, is a flaw. It's a failure to understand the proper integration of consequences. The consequence of releasing the Epstein list is not what you think at all, but it's all negative for you for sure. And it won't affect the people you don't like at all, by the way. And you think that it would work that way or should work that way or could work that way. But it's because you don't understand how anything works and you probably don't understand the law because, yeah, doing things has consequences. We have to be careful about the consequences. And the thing is, we can misassign consequences too. You could look at the world in an economic frame and think that a person was corrupted by money rather than having been corrupt and thereby obtaining money, we'll say through their corruption, right? That's every mobster ever, by the way, or hiding their corruption while acquiring money until the money made the corruption shine through. So it's hard to work this stuff out sometimes, right? Or perhaps giving them money gave them access to sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And they got corrupted, not as the result of the money, but as the result of other people wanting them to spend their money on these vices. The problem with money is you now have money to spend on your wildest desires. That corruption was already there. You just couldn't afford it. Now you can afford your corruption. Does money corrupt? I don't think so. I see no evidence. I see all the evidence in the opposite direction that money does not corrupt people. And yeah, there are a few exceptions to that, of course, because nothing is universal, but also consequences indeed. It's very hard to work out consequences. If you think releasing the Epstein list is going to have the consequences you expect, you are wrong. Even I won't guess at the consequences of that, but I know what will happen to some extent. And those people that you want gone after because they have something you don't, well, they also have the power to lash out at you for it. And they damn well will. And I don't want that for you. And I don't want it for me because I'll get hit with the shrapnel too, no doubt. And since nothing, they're not going to jail, since that's never going to happen, not a good plan. It's not a good plan. And the thing is, What happens in this age of gnosis world, in this scientism world where we've carved up the world and then tried to put it back together some other way? We've gathered things together. Well, you get consequences. If you put things together that do not belong together, they fracture. In the United States, when they brought immigrants in, and the immigrants would go to a certain part of the city, and that city would become part of that place. I grew up in Lowell, Mass, which had more immigrants than the entire universe combined. We had a Polish section, we had an Irish section, we had a Greek section, we had an Italian section. We had all these things. And later on, the Laotian sections, right? And they had Spanish sections. It happens. You can't just put people together in the city of Lowell, Mass, and expect everyone to just kumbaya. No, they fracture into their own little groups. There's nothing wrong with that. If you tie things together that don't belong together, right? So you hold them together, you force them not to fracture, you have a bomb, technically. Technically, that's what a bomb is. Right? There's other ways to make a bomb, but that's one way to make a bomb. If you bring things together and you do not bind them or put them to use somehow, someone else will do that. Consequences. You can't just gather things together and expect nothing to happen except what you want. That's not how the world works. It's not how the world's ever worked. It's not how the world's ever going to work. It's not going to happen. Can't just draw things together. You can't just add Muslims to the UK and expect nothing bad to happen. There are consequences to things like mass immigration. There are consequences to the destruction of the fourth estate. There are consequences to the 2008 housing crisis. There are consequences to basically using Ukraine as a way to launder money. There are consequences to creating countries out of nothing and drawing random lines on a map and saying, and therefore. Now, those consequences may take decades, a century or two. You want consequences? The Teutonic Order, perfectly fine, kind of a failure in their initial mission. What happens to the Knights Teutonic? They get traumatized by the assault on the Knights Templar. I had always wondered. Everybody talks about like the direct impact, we'll call it, of Friday the 13th and Demolay and all of the Knights Templar stuff. And everyone talks about the actual consequences that came from that impact. Well, one of them was the Knights Teutonic. And because of their trauma, they created a monster that turned into Prussia. Prussia turns into Germany, which comes out of pretty much nothing, and tries to bind a bunch of different people, different cultures, different languages together by giving them a common language and saying, and therefore. It didn't work. It blew up twice, maybe more, depending upon how you count it. Its attempt to become manifest resulted in unbelievable amounts of death. Now, that's packed within a larger narrative, right? See my history videos with Adam, the playlist. That narrative is there, but that happened. We can look at that and go, oh, yeah, there were consequences to all this stuff. Look at this chain of consequence that actually happened, because it did. And the thing is, you got to be careful what you do, because doing things has impacts in the world and you cannot see them all, much less understand them. And that's just how it is. That's what makes consequences difficult for people. And the thing is, what if you fail to reach your goal? What should you take away from that? Careful study and counsel from others. That's what you should take away from your failure to meet a goal. Why? Because maybe there was more going on that you didn't know about. I had a job years ago and they hired me to do a thing. Now, I'm not a normal person. You hire me to do a thing, I do the thing, and that thing gets done. And that's just the way it is. They didn't want the thing to get done. They thought the thing was impossible. But I specialize in impossible, and I lost my job. Consequences. Consequences of success. They had to get rid of me because what they wanted to happen was the IT team to fail, and I wasn't about to let that happen. I took them at their word. They were scumbags and liars, but consequences of believing people even. Got to be careful who you believe. People will tell you all kinds of things. And if you're on the wrong side of that, it can get bad. Really bad. So the thing is, how can we interact with consequences? Well, choose to trade wisely. It's a trade off. Choose it wisely. Trade offs are the control through acceptance of consequences. You accept the consequences, or you accept that there are consequences, and that gives you control over the situation. Okay, if I do something, there are consequences. If I don't do something, there are consequences. Which set of consequences would I like to have? Oh, wait. If I do something different, there might be a different set of consequences. So I'm better off doing something and getting a larger set of consequences than doing nothing and having whatever consequences come. And sometimes the answer is to do nothing and see what happens for sure. But being aware of that asymmetrical decision making between doing nothing and doing something, where doing something has lots of possible trade offs for consequences, whereas doing nothing, the consequences are kind of set. You may not know what they are still, but they're kind of set. And maybe you're cognitively overloaded, and so that's the best answer. I don't know. In fact, I don't even care because it doesn't matter. And this is how you learn about the world without experiencing it directly, too, right? You can look at the consequences of other people's behavior to see what not to mimic or what to mimic, because after all, the power of positive thinking folks have a point. I'm always amused by the people who say money corrupts and then are pissed off that they're not getting paid enough. I'm like, are you okay? Because you seem to have a first order logic problem called you don't know how to do first order logic. But hey, no skin off my nose. Puts me at a distinct advantage. So watching other people and seeing the consequences of their action can be amazingly helpful, especially with what not to do. Negative signals are always stronger than positive signals. Unless evolution is completely false and everything about it is wrong, of course, but I don't think so. And the thing is, watching consequences of others is a good form of engagement because you can see those consequences and embrace the signal being sent, no matter how prickly it is. Oh, this guy went into programming, became a code monkey. His life is miserable. He gets sucked into video games, whatever. Yeah, that happens. Things have consequences, and maybe you go, "Oh, it didn't really work out for him the way he thought it would." And you can make a decision. Well, I actually would like to be a code monkey, right? Fair. Or maybe I should avoid that. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It matters that you're looking at the consequences and weighing them. And that's the problem. And the thing is, you don't get to pick consequences in that way because consequences were here first. And that's why it's best to learn from people older than you because they can tell you the consequences that unfold over time. Giving in to the 3-year-old for a year may not seem like a big deal just to keep him quiet, give him cookies all the time. But then he's 300 pounds at age 30. He has no way to know that. And in fact, you might have no way to know that. That's why you have to learn from other people who are older, came before. And consequences are the evidence that there is a pre existing order within creation itself. Where it comes from isn't so important because knowing where it came from is just sort of leaping over, jumping to the end, or bypassing the observation of what is. A lot of people follow the pattern of trying to know where everything came from, whether it's the science morons or the religious zealots. It makes no matter. It's like, well, maybe, but who cares? Because you still have to deal with it. It's not going to change just because you know where it came from, or maybe you know the entity that caused it, or maybe you know the forces that caused it. It doesn't change the consequences one little whit. Right? You stick your hand in the fire, it's still gonna burn. You can go on and on and on about heat transfer and infrared and all this other not you're still gonna burn. Like it really doesn't matter at all. It's irrelevant, right? Your relevance realization is off. And I see that a lot, obviously. I'm sure you do too, especially on the internet in the age of gnosis, where everybody wants to know everything. And they want to know things before they do anything. And they keep themselves paralyzed, but busy. They can keep yourself really busy learning about something. You could spend a month looking up pretty much anything, looking up cars before you buy one. I assure you that is a waste of your time. You go to Car and Driver, you figure out where you are either in price range or in type of car you want, and you read their top 5 in each of the ranges and figure out where you're at. That takes an hour, not a month. And everything pretty much has a pattern like that, right? You go to this person who knows you or who you can explain your situation to, and they know the topic at hand, and they can tell you what's best for you. And maybe they get it wrong, right? Uh, but you don't waste a month. Fail fast. Not entirely a stupid idea. And the thing is, consequences are independent of your will or your intent, and in fact, your being. They are constraints upon your being, and therefore they are independent from your being. Consequences are indifferent to your existence. They are there despite your personal, private perspective, despite what is going on in the imagination, despite your personal fantasy. And this is how you know you're out of touch with reality. You get angry at consequences. You do something, a thing happens, you're upset. Okay, you've got a disconnection. In fact, consequences happen without your action. You can do absolutely nothing and you're still subject to them. They don't vanish because you imagine they aren't there. Or you say, well, I didn't do anything and therefore I'm innocent. Oh, not doing anything does not convey innocence, I'm afraid. We were set upon this earth to do things. So you better do the right things and not the no things. And we know that doing nothing has consequences, right? Because not only is the road to hell paved with good intent, but negative consequences, because entropy, by the way, but evil thrives when good men do nothing. Consequences indeed. So this is all over our culture. You can't say like, "Well, I didn't realize doing nothing didn't get me around the consequence." Of course, the sayings are right there. They've been there all along. You can't just sit back and do nothing because entropy will give you consequences without your knowledge or consent. And the thing is, because consequences are so much bigger than you are, they were here first and they will remain long after you're dead. Better think about that real close, carefully. You cannot know them for yourself, much less understand them. You can't even see consequences. Not all of them, which is what fools you. Ha, I saw a consequence once. Yeah, one of them. Once. Thanks, genius. Captain Obvious to the rescue. And it's why you need the perspective of other people through time to help you. Once you've mastered that video game reality, you know the consequences for every action in a video game. People go out of their way to learn every action's consequences in very large video games. And they show other people online even. It's a simulacra of how it works in the real world. And now you get the impression, because of your cute little video game, that you can do that outside of the video game. And whether that's a conscious thing or not, you're going to mimic that behavior. Some people mimic it by trying all kinds of wild things in the real world that have very bad consequences. And other people mimic it other ways. But it happens. And once it's got you, it's got you. Consequences are very much bigger than you are. You're not going to figure them all out. Don't stay trapped in analysis paralysis. And the thing is, people ignore consequences at their own peril because consequences don't require your recognition. So they happen without your intent and against often your will. When we do not learn from consequences, we cannot see reality. We can only project things on the screen inside our head. Psychological projection, anyone? And that's where we are trapped. And what we are confirming to be upset at consequences rather than being humbled by them. Don't get trapped into allowing consequences to confirm a negative world view. Oh, the archons are out to get me. You're just not being humbled by the fact that you don't know how the world works. Pesky outcomes don't care about your feelings. Consequences don't care about your feelings. When you do things in the world, the consequences of your actions have ripple effects that cause people not to care about your feelings. And people miss somehow all of that. Why? I do not understand. And the real kicker is when you expect certain consequences and they don't manifest because often there is no good reason. You help someone out, maybe you give them some money, a place to stay, right? They forget about you entirely. Someone offers you work or to cooperate with them, and You do the work, you never get paid. You're kind of expecting different set of consequences that's a little bit more common maybe, or maybe not. How do you know? What do you do in an imperfect world where you expect perfect results, video game reality, and fail to see consequences? You get bitter, you get resentful, you come up with reasons, excuses. You blame the archons, the ancient aliens, you blame the government. Ultimately, you don't see the consequences of getting ripped off, but other people do. So you may get ripped off, never realize it, other people see what happens. There's a story, I don't know how true it is, but it's the story I was given. My uncle was very young. He found a motor in a shop that he really wanted. He was very much into cars and put some money down and told the guy he'd pay it off over time. Was paying the motor off, and the guy sold it out from under him. And he got very upset. And that is why his brother, according to his brother, my other uncle, is why he acted the way he acted. He felt very betrayed as a very young man by the world because someone ripped him off. And the consequences are, yeah, maybe that's what skewed him towards drug addiction. Maybe that's what skewed him towards risky behavior. He used to do wild things. Like he'd be like, "Don't touch that boat." I'm like, "Why is there a boat in the backyard?" He's like, "Oh, it belongs to my boss, but he didn't pay me, so I took the boat." And I'm like, "What? Like, why? Why do you think that's an appropriate response? It seems like there's got to be a better way to work it out than stealing his boat." Not for my uncle. He was going to get his money one way or another. He was super sensitive to that stuff, but he had been ripped off. Other people saw the consequences of that, but I don't think he ever understood what drove him. I don't think he ever understood it. And we don't see the consequences. You know the worst off people are. You're gonna love this. The worst off people are good looking people with money. They are so screwed in life. They can't really trust anybody. They have unusual powers of persuasion because of their good looks. And forget about it. If they're charismatic on top of that, it completely warps them. And so they're used to getting what they want. And I'll just I'll tell you, uh, you get a good looking woman, and you don't want to go out with her, and she wants to go out with you. Ooh, they don't handle that well. Let me tell you, they don't handle that well at all because they're used to getting what they want. And if they're wealthy, oh, forget it. Like that's all because they're really used to getting what they want, right? Like if you also have money, it's like, whoa, you ain't got no constraints. And the thing is, you can tell the people who don't spend much time in nature, those people who don't get out much, don't interact with things that aren't them or their voluntary engagement in a fantasy. Video games, right? There's others, but video games are the big one. Books is another engagement, voluntary engagement of fantasy. You can tell people read too many books, right? You can also tell the people who spend all their time with nature and not other people, right? We call them aloof, right? We say they're not self-aware or something, and yeah, they kind of flitter about. Well, they're just not used to people. See, the consequences that you have in nature and the consequences of interacting with other people are different in noticeable and distinct ways. Do you notice them? And you can call it politics, but that's missing the point. You can blame aloofness on a lack of self awareness, but that's missing the point. The problem is that you're not spending enough time in these domains where the consequences exist and where they work differently. Nature is not the same type of agent, and the agents in nature are not the same type of agents as humans. And so it's natural that the consequences in nature and of natural things would be, we'll say, lesser or different from the consequences dealing with other creatures at your layer of the natural hierarchy. Consequences must be tended to, or you will suffer them rather than integrate them. If you integrate them, you gain wisdom, among other things. Not the only thing that gets you wisdom, but it will get you some wisdom. So the takeaway is to pay attention to consequences because they're there to give you a signal about reality. That's why when somebody says, I don't know reality or we can't know reality, I say, I'm sorry to hear about your problem. I'm glad that's not my problem. I have other problems, just not that one. Because that's how it is. And I do feel bad for those people, especially if they're projecting. Well, I can't understand reality, so we can't understand reality because I have a 160 IQ. No, you're a moron who's associated his intelligence with a number because you don't even understand how the IQ test works. So you've got a test, you get the results of the test, and you don't even know what they mean or how they correlate to the real world, which is very poorly on the high end and very well on the low end. Huh, isn't that mysterious? See Nassim Taleb's work on this. It's rather good. He talks about it in his books too. I like the way he talks about it. He explains it pretty darn well. But that signal about reality, that's what consequences are doing. If you're not getting that signal, you're screwed. No wonder why people say they don't know reality. They need to get out. They need to stop reading books. They need to stop having conversations. They need to start being in nature and interacting with people, not conversing about abstractions. I'm finding out. Did you sleep well last night? How's the steak taste? Why do you like to go mudding? What's your favorite movie from last year? Learn a lot about people that way. It's not that hard. And it's how you learn by doing things. There's no other type of learning. Sorry. Just reading's not learning. Talking to other people and listening to their mistake is not learning. That's just mimicry, actually, right? You did what you were told, right? Seeing what consequences there are and integrating that into your worldview. That's how you learn. Notice that you should not adjust your worldview based on what you read, based on conversations, based on listening to others talk. That is doing what you're told. That's all NPC behavior. Sorry, but it kind of clearly is. You've been given a script, that's what a conversation boils down to, and you're following it. That's why they want to get your agreement. Oh, you want my agreement? That's what you want. And I want you dead. Let's see who wins. Your desires aren't so important now. You don't want to be equal to me if my desires are, we'll say, a little bit more extreme than yours, right? Oh, how weird. Where'd your equality go, bro? What happened to it all? That's why equality is dangerous. And believing that you can understand something like consequences by reading books and having conversations. Believing that you don't need to be in nature, that you don't need to do that rote, boring physical work. That's the road to hell. That's what that is. Because you're never going to learn about the world without engaging in the consequences. And you're never going to be able to discern things without engaging with consequences. You're just never going to be able to do any of these things. They won't be available to you in any form. There are consequences to having a live stream. Preparation alone is. Anyway, there are also consequences to doing monologues. And now I'm tired. However, I need to go through the comments. Ixnod, causes have consequences. Indeed. Make final cause great again. Indeed. Integration requires boredom. It does. It requires quiet time. That's why on the Jordan Peterson 12 Rules for Life book club, we did 30 seconds quiet time. Maybe that's not enough, but I'm really trying to step people into things. You try to get somebody who's not acquainted with quiet time, quiet for an hour, or I'm sorry, a minute, a full minute. They can't do that. They're arrogant, so they never will try. But the people who never try, it's because they can't. Common language, and therefore, yeah, Ixon, that's the existence of Germany. I've been doing quite a bit of research on Prussia. I was like, wait, what's going on here? Like a Tower of Babel. I'm not super familiar with the story. I don't think so. I mean, I think the problem is that when you have a place with a bunch of different people and then somebody wants it to be a place and everybody around you is telling you it's a place and they're like, oh, there's a country called Germany. And then you believe them. You try to make that happen. And so if you look back historically at somebody trying to make that happen, makes total sense. Bad, wrong, and evil, but makes sense. Like it's not unreasonable, illogical, or irrational. Like you're told it's a place and it's clearly fractured. I mean, you need to unify it. So you pull out the tools of unification. I'm okay. What were people expecting if not that? I mean, it's not that hard. So yeah, you shoot him, someone else is going to come along. Are they going to be as good? Maybe not, but that might have been a lot worse. You'd be surprised when you go looking. Russia too, right? When you look at these at these histories and the interaction between the generals and their commanders, and what small decisions led to what very large consequences, uh, it's really interesting. Uh, Somebody with a slightly lesser ego, but propped up in the same way, might have done a hell of a lot more damage than what we got. People don't account for that. They always think like, no, 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 no. We have the worst possible scenario. Oh no, you do not. No, you do not. You piss off enough generals by excoriating them for doing the right thing on the ground. And the other generals get nervous and they don't follow your orders quite so well anymore, even when you're right. Oops, consequences. There's a ton of that in World War II on all sides, even because, of course, there are. That's the method of symmetry right there. So, is it like a Tower of Babel? I don't think so. It doesn't sort of resonate with me, but I don't read that. It's too long. CC Mool. If you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough. Type vibes. Well, no. If you're going to be dumb, you've got to submit to somebody smarter than you. That's what you have to do because you ain't got no choice anyway. And if you try not to do that, there are consequences. Sandy, the idea of consequences is framed in a negative way, like punishments growing up. Yeah, that's true. Uh, now that I'm old and assessing the consequences of full-time, part-time retire, I needed to mean assess and decide. Well, and they're the things you make the value decisions about, right? The consequence. What's the consequence of retiring versus the consequence of working part-time versus, right? I remember a while back when I lived at my first house, the neighbor was a was a musician, a reasonably, above average talented musician, right? Was never going to be a rock star, but could have been a folk song hero or something. Um, Interesting guy. And one day he was telling me about, you know, the process of getting their first CD made and how much money it cost him. And he said, "Look at all this money that this cost me." And it was a lot of money at the time. I think it was like $15,000. And I said, "How long did this take you?" And he said, "It took 2 years." And I said, "Let me ask you a question. How much money would you have spent on entertainment if you weren't keeping yourself busy doing this?" And he went, "Huh." And I said, "I bet it's more than 15 grand." And he thought about it for a couple seconds and he said, "Yeah, it might be." So all of a sudden, that CD that he never made any money on, obviously, where he was out about 15 grand for having all those CDs, didn't seem like such a bad deal. Consequences of not cutting the CD were probably a loss greater than $15,000. But that's not clear to people when they're flattening the world and dealing in numbers instead of understanding that being alive for a year costs you money and entertainment costs you money. And if you keep yourself so busy that you don't need to be entertained, you actually will save money even if the endeavor you embark on loses you money. That's why hobbies are useful. Right. And people don't think about these things. They think, "Oh, looking at cat videos on the internet, um, geez, that's cheaper than having a hobby, I guess, if money's the most important thing," which now you've got two problems. Um, or if you don't understand how the world works, because you're not trading off consequences. Sandy, I'm not sure if you're encouraging good patterning here or just stating the negatives. Well, there's contrast. So I'm certainly not only stating negatives. And care, I don't know if it matters whether you or anyone do or don't care. Oh, well, that's the only thing that matters, but sure. I still need to assess the consequences of past and future consequences. Funny that you're talking about this today. Wow. The world works in funny ways, Sandy, that's for sure. Ixnod, learning before doing, very suspicious. Yeah, well, impossible, in fact. And there are consequences to trying. It's called turning into an arrogant online jerk, among other things. Ixnod, people caring about their actions matters. Yeah, well, usually when people use the word love, what they mean is care. They mean caring. That's what they mean, usually. Not all the time, but almost all the time. John Vervaeke had a great point. I mean, this is the problem with John Vervaeke. It's such good work, and he just doesn't get the implications. He doesn't understand the consequences. What were the consequences of Ritnar? Well, dear viewer, let me tell you, I was there. Now, obviously, there were lots of groups working on Ritnar, and I'm not claiming to have been part of any of the others, because although I did keep an eye on a few of them, who cares? The consequences of just putting out the idea of the religion that is not a religion is that all the rebels who are unhappy and resentful and former atheists or current atheists who realize there's a problem that they need to solve, what do? They come up with a cult. They form a cult instantly, right? And sometimes we were super organized in the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis server. And several times they tried to get Manuel and I to actually pick up projects. And I was like, "Listen, guys, I am here for the community that I built, which is this one, this Awakening from the Meaning Crisis community. Uh, I am here to facilitate the community. I think this project is dumb and I want no part of it, but I will run your meetings and take your damn meeting notes." And of course, they were completely ungrateful for even that. I'm like, "I brought you organization, which you didn't have, and all you can do is bitch." Manuel did the same, and he did the same on BOM too, right? When we were trying to help Paul Vanderklay to avoid the same problem that Vervaeke fell into, which is the cult creation machine. And the reason why guys like Paul and Jonathan Peugeot, who, I'm sorry, my estimation of Jonathan Peugeot is going down by the day at this point. Uh, the reason why they like Vervaeke is because they're agenosis too, baby. They love them propositions and them scientific authority backing them up. And so, see, Cogsci agrees with us religious folks. It's like, well, no, it absolutely does not. And B, why do you need that? That's not your area of expertise. So what are you doing? You're getting scientific cover for your ideas because you kind of think maybe that that's what Jordan Peterson did. There's no what Jordan Peterson did, guys. And I know I owe you more videos on tricks of Jordan Peterson because people seem confused about this. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. But what are the consequences of Jordan Peterson doing the magic that he did? Well, we're seeing it. The Peterson sphere is real. You can check out petersonsphere.com, right? I mean, it's a real phenomena and it's really important, but like it's really important. We should care about how that unfolds over time. And we should try to make it better because the opportunity for it to get worse is there. And I'm a no on worse, oddly. I don't know if you guys knew that, but I'm just a generalized no on worse. My whole thing is that you should be better. Why should you be better? Because the world needs you. And the world needs you to be better. Like the world can't be better unless you're better. It's just that simple. Good stuff, Ninja. So nice to see you, Denise. It's good to have you here. Thank you. Okay to be dumb, just don't be stupid. We had the greatest uh, when I was a wee lad. Uh, we had this thing, my best friend and I, back and forth with I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid, right? Which uh, pretty soon turned into uh, I may be stupid, but I'm not dumb, right? Which pretty soon turned into why I may be stupid, but I'm dumb, right? Which then turned into well, I may be stupid, but I'm not dumb. Oh no, wait. I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid. Never mind. Never mind. Right. Um, so yeah, I think the problem is that when we don't have the ability to inform the world poetically and see these, they'd call them symbolic, although I have my problems with that, connections of things in the world, the consequences make no sense. They don't make any sense. Well, why aren't they releasing the list? Well, because releasing the list won't do what you think it does, right? I'm old enough to remember when they've released all of Al Gore's emails where he said in the email, I read them, not all of them, but I read the pertinent ones. He never denied. He said my emails got hacked into. They were his emails, guys. Okay, I read them. Oh, we're just looking to get 1% of the $1 trillion energy market. That's before the book. So this was known. It was reported on CNN. It's not like the mainstream media didn't report what Al Gore's emails said and what his motivation was. He could care less about the climate. Him and his, is it 5 houses, using more electricity than a small town, by the way. He didn't care about that issue. He never cared about that issue. He's just trying to remake the energy industry so he can get 1% of it because that's more money than he has now. No one cared. No one did anything. It was on CNN. Nobody cared. No one did. The climate guys, when they got caught with the hockey stick garbage, Iowa Hawk was the first person. It was a blog to reproduce the hockey stick. No scientific team was ever able to reproduce the climate change hockey stick. None. Zero. I tried. I couldn't do it. I'm like, I don't really get this. Here are their numbers. There's no way to graph those numbers into a hockey stick. What are you, high? What are you doing? I'm a data scientist. I actually know how to do that. That I couldn't make it work. I was like, what are these guys doing? Their emails came out afterwards. No one cared. No one did anything. It was reported on CNN, guys. I read some of them. They were authentic. Those guys never denied that those were their emails. They couldn't. It was pretty clearly their emails. They fudged the numbers. They said so. It's in the emails. It was reported on CNN. No one cared. No one did anything. What do you think is going to happen? Isn't the first, second, or third time lists have been released or not released? Doesn't do anything. You can't worry about that stuff. You're not going to change it. And if you are, shut up and go do the thing. You can do things without saying a damn word. Most of the things I do, total silence. The more talking I do, the more distracted I get, the less things I can do. Oh, it's an asymmetrical relationship there, buddy. Good stuff, ninja. Stupid is when you invest in it. Yeah, well, that's true. Ixnaan, we always said crazy, not stupid. Yeah, I have to own up to crazy, dumb, stupid, all of it. Sorry. Good stuff, ninja. None of them care about any of it. Well, I don't know about that. I think the problem is people are lost as to what to do. And with the flattening of the world and the breaking down of hierarchy, left, right, and center, I mean, and it just comes roaring back, right? The Bitcoin bros, they're all about stable coins. I'm like, you guys used Bitcoin to get away from these things that you're calling stable coins. And now, because they're fiat, although Bitcoin's double fiat, actually, different problem. But now you're going to tether your coin to their coins, call it stable coins, and call it a day. That's a little suspicious. But you see, the number of people that can't see that connection is, well, all the Bitcoin bros, basically. And I mean, I have a weekly meeting with them. We have our meeting on Friday mornings, actually. These guys cannot see that at all. I mean, there's a group of us just laughing our asses off at them because we're like, what are you guys doing? It's not like you can't make money in that turmoil or whatever, but and the amount of confusion. Why are banks getting into the Bitcoin business? Because you're dumb enough to give them your money. Because you don't understand banking and you think you've reinvented banking, and all you've really done is switched who's the bank, and you don't realize that. And that's the problem. Good stuff, Ninja. Cans of tuna and powdered eggs are the next currency. Well, everybody thinks that. I um I tend to not believe that. But look, that's all I've got. I'm caught up on comments. If somebody would like to jump in, there will be consequences. Like I need to see you on video. You don't necessarily need to be on video the whole time, but it would be helpful if you were, because it's easier to talk that way. And if you can stick to the topic, or at least not get, we'll say, overly personal about the whole thing, then I'm happy to have you jump in and we can talk about other consequences, not just the consequences of jumping in. Um, Good stuff, Ninja. ATG. Apocalyptic trade goods. Yeah, well, I have a video on economy. You might like it. I basically point out that economics is bullshit because it measures everything in dollars, and most of the economy is not done in dollars because most trade is not done through money. A lot of it is, but the less important, and most of the money trade is not done on goods; it's done on other money, which could be bad, could be good, hard to know. What are the consequences of opening up our mortgage market to foreign banks, giving them a wink, wink and a nod promise that the security was coming from the federal government via Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, uh, and then allowing tons of mortgage fraud to go on. I don't know, maybe the 2008 housing crisis. Don't fall for the big short guys. Not that they're wrong. A lot of what they say is right. Also, if you listen carefully to the movie, which is probably in the book as well, although I didn't read the book, they were contributing to the problem. In fact, they exacerbated it. They made it worse, right? You may think these guys are smart, but who takes the other side of a trade on fraud? So your money is betting that they don't have the assets and cash flow that they claim. How are you going to make money on that again? I'm real confused. Well, it turns out you can't because there's nothing on the other side of the trade. Right. And then they all bitch because they got bailed out by the government. I'm like, well, otherwise you would have actually gotten nothing. And a few of you became multimillionaires. I don't know what the hell you're complaining about there, but thanks for ruining it for everybody. Also, nobody thinks about that. Not even Polly. Polly's looking a little sad. We had to rush to get Polly going here today. That's part of the problem. So that's my fault because I totally forgot about Polly. We had an emergency clothing disaster, and then the last 2 minutes I went, oh Polly. That's why the stream started about 40 seconds later than usual, actually, because I try to start that video right on the 1 minute mark, right around that area. And I started it on like the 22-second mark. But hey, these little things happen. In a live stream, there are consequences. Prepping everything, driving everything over, including my cool captain's mug from Ocracoke Island. Consequences. Consequence of going to Ocracoke Island was lots of cool pirate paraphernalia. Right from Pirate Island itself. It's a beautiful thing. I think I like my red flag better than my black flag for sure. But I got to find something to do with the black flag. We can't just leave it folded up somewhere. I'll have to hang it up somehow. Maybe not here. But I'll find somewhere to put it. I miss my black flag. I love the glass mosaic. The glass mosaic pirate has got to be my favorite thing. So, yeah, that was a find. There were two of them. The first store we went to, the other one was much worse, and it was like twice as much money. And this one was in a little boutique shop. And I was thinking about it the other day. A lot of people don't realize this. It was very clear too. The woman running the boutique shop was losing money left, right, and center. Also very wealthy and didn't care. She had other sources of income. A lot of people don't realize how many people have, especially boutique shopping things. A lot of those people are wealthy, and that running a shop is a hobby, and so they just offer like that glass mosaic pirate thing. There ain't no way no one made no money on that. It was really cheap. I was like, holy crap. Like you had this. I mean, unless maybe they made it on the island, but I don't think so. Unless you made it on the island, man. And the shipping to Ocracoke Island is not cheap. Like it's not fantastically expensive, but like it ain't cheap. The shipping cost alone was probably half the cost of the item. Like I'm like, what is going on here? You're not making any markup on this puppy. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that exists. Also, yeah, when you go to wealthy, like Ocracoke's very wealthy. Not that there aren't like super poor people on that island. I think there still are, but like that's a very, very high end place. Uh, yeah, they do things for hobbies. They do things to do them. They make sure their stores are open to have stores open. They don't really care, right? And when you don't know that, you don't really understand the world. Like if you think the world is just businesses are only in business to make money, well, 95% of businesses failed in the first 5 years. What does that tell you? Right? Um, Even the profitable ones, by the way, because profit isn't everything. Yeah. It's it's hard for people to understand the consequences of living in a world of abundance. And the consequence is we just have ridiculous stuff available, like all this pirate paraphernalia. Pirate suspenders. What a silly thing to have. I have silly pirate suspenders. They're very pirate-rific. Got little skull and crossbones on them. Like, why does this exist? Other than to please me infinitely. Because it kind of does. And it just bothers me lately that people really aren't thinking through the consequences of mimicking Jordan Peterson, getting these groups together, and what happens with these groups. And I've seen it over and over again. Now, first of all, I've been on the internet since before the web was a thing, right? And by on the internet, I mean I own Class C internet addresses, which I've owned since the early 90s. I am the internet in a substantial way. I'm on the Aaron Council. Technically, I think I can vote and everything, but those addresses used to be free until a few years ago. The bastards. Now I have to pay for them, but I'm not going to complain. I had them for free for decades, so like whatever. You get them for free for 2.5 decades. You could start paying for them eventually. It's fine. It's not a super huge amount of money, although it's it's more money than I have coming in because I got no money coming in. When YouTube changed their algorithm back in I think it was February or whatever. I don't know what the hell they did. I don't know what they did, but my earnings get cut like right down by an order of magnitude. Used to be about $30 a month, and now it's 3. I'm like, what happened? And they won't own up to it at all. They just do. Nope, no, nothing changed. We don't see any problems. I'm like, are you kidding me? I have more subscribers, more views, more watch hours, and a tenth of the money. What happened? Something changed? I don't. What did you do? What did you do? And Google will not cop. They will not cop. They did fix the other problem, right? The other problem is an attack. I mean, it's not just Google. Twitter did the same thing, right? I'm not monetized on Twitter. Do you know why? I've complained to them a couple times. Like, guys, I meet all your requirements. So you say I'm in review. Are you gonna finish? Nope. No response whatsoever. Don't know. Someone did that though. Like someone did that. There's no question about it. So I've had a number of those incidents on the online space, but it's hard because on online, look, I've been at the Fortune 500s. I never worked at Google or Amazon. I refuse to go near those places, or Facebook or any of those guys. But the issue is people in the back room will just change things that they're not supposed to and not tell anybody. There's Denise. How are you doing, man?
I'm having a bad hair day.
I'm always having a bad hair day. That's why I have a hat.
Yeah, I have a hat, but it's a big wide brim sun hat. It doesn't do well in the house. So
you need a pirate hat. That's what you need to come on here. We'll have to hook you up.
You know, we have a whole pirate thing going out here and along the shoreline here, so it probably would fit right in.
Yeah, you could be the pirate queen.
Yeah.
That would be. It's good to see you. What's been going on? I've been following some of your stuff there.
Well, not too much. I kind of lost track of what you were saying because the StreamYard takes a minute or two to bring me up, and I can't listen at the same time. But you were talking about wealthy people running boutiques.
Yeah.
And it was reminding me of one of the reasons why I just don't even bother to try anymore. I'm really into the whole small business, hobby to business thing, which most crafters are. But
yeah.
I had a whole thing going on back in the earliest 2000s when I first moved to Texas. And I was making little realistic, I was buying the dolls. They were very realistic, nicely crafted baby dolls, newborn size. And I was making little cradles and layouts and everything for them. Partly because I have a very strong, if I was a millionaire, I would really put some effort into this, that we used to teach little girls how to be good mothers. So even if they forgot about it by the time they reach adolescence, they weren't interested. So what? The fact is, at the point where you become a young mother, even in the best of circumstances, it's going to be extremely stressful. And under extreme stress, we do revert to our 6-year-old self when we first encountered the world. We revert to our childhood. And that's why the baby doll practice with little children made for much more stable parenting later on. Anyway, so my whole thing was starting a small business marketing these baby dolls, and I had the all the carpentry material, and I was making the cradles and everything, and I was sewing the little quilts and stuff. And a couple of ladies in town were real interested in helping this thing get off the ground. One of them, I thought she was a businesswoman because she ran a beauty parlor. And the other one was just a friend. And the whole thing just kind of fell apart because they kept wanting to add stuff like, oh, we should put lace on this and we should do this and that. And every time I would say, well, I've got the cost figure down for what they're going to sell on. And if we add lace, then it's going to change the price structure. And I could not get them to stop thinking that I was crying poverty. I could not get them out of that mindset. I could not get them to say, no, it's a system of you know what the market will bear. You look, I looked at all the prices in the toy shops and the other boutiques. And in fact, I discovered that buying wooden baby furniture, baby doll furniture that was made in China was no cheaper than doing it at home and I was figuring $10 an hour as the labor cost. So if I did hire somebody, that's what I would have been paying them. And doing it myself, I just figured that into the cost. So I couldn't get them out of that mindset at all, no matter how hard. And then I found since then, it wasn't just those two ladies. You cannot get people to think systematically about any kind of economic activity. There's just something, there's something short-circuited in the brain.
Well, it depends too what class they're coming from. If they grew up with money, then they don't typically understand how cost structures work.
You wouldn't say they were wealthy, but they didn't. Also, I found out the woman who I was really surprised at, the one who was running the beauty shop, and I even tried to reason with her about it. And she says, well, anytime she had a problem, her husband stepped in. Basically, it was a hobby. Her husband was subsidizing the beauty shop. And, and when I said, well, that wasn't the point of what I was trying to do, then, of course, it again turned into me crying poverty, which I wasn't doing. I wanted to set up a business that would then be able to support somebody. You know, and I could retire from it and move on and let somebody else actually support their family with it.
Right. Well, that's a lot of people in business too, and people don't see it. They see them as greedy and all that. I'm like, that's not, like, you need to get out and actually meet people, because it's not no one's like you, but most people aren't like that. And because if they were, we'd all be impoverished, right? Everybody who didn't own a business would be a slave, and that's not the case at all. I mean, a lot of people have enough money to build a business, so and there's more business creation than there is destruction in the United States. The logic doesn't follow at all. I think that's the problem. A lot of people try to logic their way into these things, especially consequences, and they assume there's some cigar smoking, dark room somewhere where people are planning things, when in fact most things are just the result of consequences that people don't understand.
Yeah, if you try to plan something, you run into all kinds of problems with, it's almost like planning is I don't know. I mean, I think you're describing the way things are, but is it the way they should be? It's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have just lost the sense for how things work, and the number of people that will talk to me, because I'm a software engineer, among other things, and they'll say, well, this software should be built this way. And I'm like, obviously, you've never done this. That will never work. And I can tell them why. I can say, like, no, it doesn't work because of this. And this is the problem you're into, and that's the problem right. And they don't, because they've never done it, and they've never run into the fact that it doesn't work. And they can imagine how it could work, right? They can, in the same way that, like, John Vervaeke imagined that you could have a religion that's not a religion. He thought it was a cheeky, cute name, and he thought that would work. And I was like, I don't know why anybody would come to the conclusion, especially after listening to Awakening from the Meaning Crisis for 52 hours, actually, if you listen to all of them, where you get the impression that that's going to work. I'm like, that does not follow from your conclusion. The stuff you've laid out does not lead to this idea that you can just, like, create religion that's not a religion. It leads to the opposite conclusion, but John could never see that. We tried so hard. We had his ear every 2 weeks in a Q&A, and could not be swayed. He could not be swayed. And he's since abandoned that idea. But how did you even get there?
Want to do that because religions tend to have a focal point. So if you're having a religion without a religion, then you're saying no focal point.
Yep.
Right. It doesn't. I don't.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really. I haven't paid a lot of attention to Vervaeke. I tried to listen a few times, but my impression of a lot of this is that a lot of the people around him, including him, are living too much inside their heads.
Oh yeah, they are.
It's like that whole world, and it's sad, really.
It is.
I mean, Peugeot's benefit he has is that because he does get his hands dirty making stuff, he can relate. I mean, he gets a little weird too sometimes, but he has like at least one foot in reality. Yep. But most people seem to be so caught up in a philosophical realm that they're not even trying to accomplish anything.
Yeah. Well, because accomplishing things has consequences, and they're afraid of consequences. I mean, I think one of the reasons why none of these people want to lead and say so explicitly, for the most part, is because they seem to think that that's what the problem of Germany and the USSR was. And I'm like, no. Like, or worse, they blame charisma. And I'm like, yeah, charisma is not going away. Like, I do like Young Guard fun facts, focal points can be imaginary or real. Yeah, and if they're imaginary, they don't work. And that takes a long time to see that. I think a big part of the problem too is for them, freedom means freedom from constraint and consequence. Like there's some world, I call it objective material reality. That's where all the academics live, where basically you get what you want to get and nothing else. And that, was part of the inspiration for, I'll say, talking about this. Jono BNZ, what kind of name is that? There is a posh area in my town with a boutique shop not making money. Yeah, well, I figure it's what rich men do to keep their bored wives semi-happy and out of their hair. Yeah, pretty much. In some cases. In other cases, just people want hobbies or like a lifelong dream. A lot of people have dreams. Like when you have enough money, you can live your dream. And if your dream is to own a shop and hang out there all day and talk to your friends, which is exactly what was happening when we bought the stuff on Ocracoke Island. She was busy talking to one of her friends, and they were talking about their real estate and their mother's houses and taking care of their mothers and all that stuff. It was a lovely conversation. And we were kind of like, can I get a price on this, please? I want to buy it. And she, I mean, if we had walked out, she wouldn't have cared one whit. Because I'm telling you right now, I stole that little pirate mosaic. There's no freaking way she made more than $1 on that. It was dirt cheap. I was shocked at how cheap it was. And the place up the street had a smaller one with fewer colors for twice the money.
Oh, I have a funny story to tell. Back in, it was 1980. 81, somewhere in there. My daughter was, she was kindergarten age. And we had gone back up to my sister's place in Lenox, Massachusetts, which is one of those posh areas and full of those kind of boutiques, particularly at that time. And I was like, just gonna have a beautiful Christmas. I mean, hold on a second. I'm busy right now.
I'm gonna put it right here.
Okay, put it there, and I'll bring it over later. Okay. Catch you later. So I was really gonna, it's like I was going through divorce and craziness of all kinds. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do Christmas right, and it was perfect. It was snowing. It was Christmas Eve. Most people had like kind of gone home, but the snowing was going on. My sister was running around the house making everything Christmassy. She had the Christmas carols on the TV. And so I grabbed my daughter. I says, we've got to do some Christmas shopping. And we went up and we're walking around in the snow and I'm having a good time. And my daughter was furious because she had been taken away from her friends. She did not like her Aunt Renee because Aunt Renee was a control freak at dinner time. And I had raised my daughter. I put a bunch of foods out and the only rule was she had to taste each one. She didn't like it, she didn't have to eat it. But Renee was a clean your plate tyrant. And she was in charge. So my daughter was not happy at all. So I'm moving along, humming Christmas carols, and my daughter's like, what are we doing in the snow? It's cold. We go into this one shop, and there was nobody in there except the lady that was and they had like $300 fisherman knit sweaters and things like that. And my daughter had gotten on my nerves, so I just said, look, just behave yourself and let me enjoy looking around this shop. So the lady kind of picked up on what was going on, and she decides to entertain the little girl. So my daughter's sitting there, and this lady is like, oh, isn't it so wonderful? Aren't you so happy that Santa Claus is coming? And everybody is just giving everybody gifts, and she's trying to cheer her up. And I'm riffling through and discovering that there wasn't anything for under $500 in that place. I finally picked up a little card of pewter buttons, which I bought for my sister because she likes to knit sweaters. And I think I paid like $20 for that stupid card of buttons. And right at that moment, I look over and my daughter is just scowling, like do I have to listen to this stupid lady? And finally, she turns to her and she says, you don't give any of this stuff away. You're selling it. And the woman just kind of like, she looks at her and she looks at me and I was like, yeah, it's a baby Marxist. And I went and I paid for the buttons and I grabbed my daughter and I go home. Now at this point, my daughter had decided that Christmas was terrible because it meant subjecting her to Aunt Renee's other habits that were not so great when it wasn't Christmas Eve and she wasn't half in the bag. And but it was like that was close. It wasn't quite Christmas Eve because it was right after that. That might have been 2 days before Christmas, because right after that, we really had it out because I said, I said to my daughter, I said, you don't have to ruin everything just because you're unhappy. And I'm going to wrap presents. And if you don't like it, then go look at a comic book or something, And I went upstairs and I'm wrapping gifts. And all of a sudden I hear this screech downstairs. And I run down and there's Santa Claus, a man in the full regalia with a big box asking for my daughter by name. And my daughter had opened the door and she was like, and she just leads him right into the living room and offers him to sit down. And she sits down and says, here I am. And he hands her the box and it was a Light Bright, which I don't know if kids know about them. They were just a plastic box that you could stick. It lit up and you could stick little clear colored plastics in to make pictures. And so he gave her that. She unwrapped it and it was a Light Bright. And he just did a little Santa Claus visit talk. And my sister was like, she pulls me over. She says, who's that? I said, I don't know. Don't you know? And she said, no. You don't know who that is? You didn't arrange this? I said, no, I didn't arrange this. So she gets on the phone. Her husband's down at the El Dorado down the road. And she says, Joe, did you send one of your buddies up here dressed up like Santa Claus? And he says, no. Nobody knew who this guy was. And so she says, look, and we were having, one of the reasons I was there was that we were having safety issues because of things that were happening with the divorce and the fact that my ex was a mental case. I mean, I don't say it to be just, I don't believe in trashing, because anytime I want to criticize him, I have to remember I married him. I did choose to marry him. I can criticize relatives because I was born into that and didn't choose it, but I did make the choice to marry this guy. And he was one of those that was just annoyingly crazy until the divorce happened. And then the possession thing kicked in and he became dangerously crazy. So she's thinking, what's going to happen here? Because he had tried to snatch my daughter a few times. That we were having custody issues, and she's like, we should call the cops. And so we're in the kitchen trying to decide if we should call the cops. The guy gets up, says thank you to everybody, wanders out, and Rini grabs the camera. She says, I'm going to get this picture anyway. She runs out, and he just got beyond the porch light into the darkness when she snapped the picture. So all she got was the image of the white ruffle on the back, and my daughter's playing with the light bright in the living room, and I'm thinking, well, he didn't do anything bad. So turned out it was somebody from her workplace that had heard, because she was telling everyone how wonderful she was being to her failure, no good younger sister. So they all knew her, and they all knew what was going on, and so they had decided to do this.
That's
and
funny.
My daughter turns around and she says to me, as if I was the grouch, she's saying, see, there's a Santa Claus. and it was a Polaroid. It was one of those little spit out Polaroid things that my sister had used. And she gets it and she says, oh my God, we can't see him. And my daughter looks at the picture and says, well, of course not. He's magic. That was Santa Claus.
Nice. Yeah, the old 600s. The old Polaroid 600s. Instant cameras. Yeah, I had one of those. Actually, a friend. I don't even know how good a friend he was. The family gave me one, like a brand new one. And I was into regular photography, but that camera, actually, I had that for years. That was a really good camera. I ended up working at Polaroid after that. Kind of interesting institution. Big.
But anyway, that was my story. Boutique culture.
That's a riot. Santa is real. Santa happens.
Yeah, and who was I to question it? It's like I wasn't the one questioning it.
That's funny. Yeah, Peugeot has a video about Santa Claus is real, sort of thing, which is pretty interesting. And people don't have any idea. I think consequences is the real problem with the leftism and the liberalism and all that, all the deadly isms. They talk about the deadly isms. I'm like, that's you guys. You guys are the ones who made up the isms. And they don't.
I think also there are a lot of consequences to having destroyed Christmas the way we did that we don't realize what it actually was. Because when Christmas was a really big deal, it was actually, you didn't buy things all year long. Even if you had money, money was not the point. You bought things at Christmas time. You kept track of what people in your family needed. And the charity that was done at Christmas was done openly. I mean, it was not, it was, you weren't status keeping with people. I mean, people did start to, and that's what wrecked it. But at the time that it was in full flower, it was actually an economic engine that created a non-judgmental context for charity, that you were not giving because somebody else was worse off than you. You were giving because it was Christmas, and that's what you do. And you received because it was Christmas. And people all year long would kind of watch what somebody else might really enjoy getting in order to be able to get the right present for them. That doesn't happen anymore because we no longer have that cycle of what some people might think of as potlatch or something.
Deprivation.
And yeah, it's like we've really lost a lot with that and don't even realize why we lost it. I mean, the idea that you just buy something because you go shopping every week. There's no longer a connection to certain times of the year are made for buying, and it was not an organic loss either, because the propaganda campaign that went into telling people that Christmas was commercial
Yep.
made it commercial, and then they transferred Christmas to Halloween, and they created Black Friday, and that was deliberate. It's very occult when you get into that. I don't know if you get into that.
Talking about Black Friday was certainly cult of mammon, deliberate. I mean, it's a really event, right? But
it's like because they could statistically say that, well, shopkeepers, the business like ones, counted that as the day they would make the cut for the year. Why would that have been a bad thing if you knew that was how the year was structured? You planned your business around that. It was like farming.
Yeah.
You know your crop is going to be harvested in a certain month. And it's not bad that you have to wait for that month to harvest it. And that was really it was more connected to an agricultural attitude. And the idea that there was this burst of activity, it really didn't mean hardship for the rest of the year, because people made the goods spread through the rest of the year.
Right.
But there was a real propaganda effort to take Christmas out of the culture and to turn it into something else.
Yeah,
and they succeeded, because it's pretty much gone.
Yeah, we've removed cyclicality as such. Right? The world used to work in cycles. And one of the things that I wish Jordan Peterson had sort of pursued, but it doesn't appear to have, is this idea that birth control had a profound effect because it removes cycles from the world. And it's not clear, but it seems to me on a second generation, it's not just the removal of the cycles or the dampening of the cycles, it's also the fact that people don't get exposed to them. There's no consequences, right? We'll say non-optional consequences from, say, your mother having these cycles. And now you don't know how to deal with cyclicality. You don't know, what do we do with cycles? What do we do with things that change over time but have a rhythm? We don't know. Well, it all collapsed into music, right? That's really the issue. Young God, nitwit take 99% of all problems are either upstream or downstream from universal coordinate time. Well, I mean, there's lots of things you could have said that would be completely incorrect, but that is among the largest. Impressive. The fact that you can draw that, connection doesn't mean it's true. It just means you get the nitwit take. Like I said, I mean, look, points for being a bigger nitwit than I thought you would be. Yes. Also, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. But hey, it is what it is. Yeah, a lot of the stuff, I think, the conspiracy theories, a lot of them are just a result of people not understanding consequences. And it must be rational, right? Somebody must be behind it. And it's like, no, things happen because when you set up certain conditions, they always go that way. Right? Cults always form when there's an absence of a religion, right? And when you try to do these, I call them emergent good things, like John Vervaeke does, you're going to end up making a lot of cults because that's how the world works, right? We can't self-unify. We can't get together and unify. Like, there's a wholeness that's greater than the sum of the parts, and that wholeness is expressed as religion. But I don't think people are understanding that correctly, and so you end up with these side effects from creating groups and not managing them, we'll say, correctly.
Well, yeah, but there's also, like, I can speak about the transition from that cycle conscious culture to what we have today. But the younger people don't have that memory because it's been wiped from the history books.
Right.
And you know what's really a really weird consequence of this? These people who are mostly the extremely wealthy who seriously get into this, who believe that they're going to create some kind of immortal existence for themselves. I was listening to what's that guy, Peter Thiel, talk about this in a recent interview. He really believes this, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. First of all, immortal means eternal. Eternal means sooner or later you're going to be bored.
Yeah.
You can't, I mean, it doesn't end. So no matter how carefully you set it up, you could even set it up so that you survive for 1,000 years. But eternity is going to go on and on and on. And of course, there's a practical side, which is that they never seem to understand that if you download your mental capacity into some kind of quantum computer or something, somebody's going to have to maintain it. And if there's some kind of collapse or revolution or something, you're screwed anyway.
Yeah.
But a lot of that lack of common sense does seem to be a consequence of not understanding cycles and talking about immortality without understanding that it means eternity.
Yeah, that's all. I call that the flat world, where people don't think in terms of the dimensionality, we'll say, of reality. Everything has been squished down to statistics or math or some other sciencey thing that's a bunch of BS. I mean, science has to carve things up and strives for the ideal of one free variable. All of the variables are controlled, but the universe is the opposite. Right, where there are no variables controlled at all. You're kind of on your own, and the way you know reality is through interacting with the consequences of changing pieces on the board, we'll say, or taking an action in the world. And because there's no cyclicality at all anymore, I mean, you can buy bananas year round. Like, that's actually not good for you. So I don't think people have an appreciation for how dangerous it is, because that cyclicality is linked to how you poetically inform the world, or how you're able to understand, we'll say, proper symbolism. Because with Peugeot, and I really like Peugeot, of course, he's French Canadian, so he can do almost no wrong, as we all know, French Canadians are capable of. But he opened the door for symbolism, and the consequence is a bunch of people are using symbolism to justify their pre-existing bad ideas about the world. And some of the stuff I hear, especially around language creation, which we did a 40 episode book club on, it's quite long, but I like Mature's book. It's quite good. That some of the book clubs on that I attended, I was like, these people are nuts. I don't know why they don't know that these relationships that they say they're drawing symbolically are wrong. They have no idea that they're wrong. None.
Yeah. It's really sad, and it's, I don't know. I mean, it covers so many levels too, from the personal to the I'm going to have to go in a few minutes.
That's all right, Denise.
To the historic, and it's what's going on in Washington with all these geriatric. I mean, one of the things I can't figure out about the Democrats is how come they can't find any young people to put into their next level. It's like, I mean, I know, like, people say, well, Trump is up there too. He's geriatric, but he surrounded himself with younger men and women. So he's aware that there's a cycle to be honored here.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Democrats, it's like they're beginning to look like a bunch of cadavers just in a death grip. And they don't even seem to be aware that that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, the big problem with the younger generation is they're incompetent. And the older generation realizes you can't put them in charge because they're just not ready. And the problem with leftists is they can't discern it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go. But
All right,
it was nice talking to you.
nice to
And
have
thank
you.
you for having me.
Absolutely.
But I do have something going on up there I have to go tend to. Okay, bye-bye.
Well, that was nice. Good to see Denise. I like her. I like her channel. She has a lot of interesting things to say. A lot of good discernment there, and always a little bit of bad discernment because it's kind of hard. Beyond God, you buy a politician, but that doesn't work. Did you ever notice? Do you ever do any freaking research on anything ever? Right? There's an anti-correlation between how much money you give politicians and the results you get. It's well published. It's been true since at least the 1970s. And you keep your investment until you really need to run someone else. No, it is anti-correlated. The Democrats spend more money than the Republicans on almost every race, and that loses more races than it wins. And that's just the way the numbers pan out. All these people talk about science and numbers, and it's funny because first of all, you'll notice they never bring any facts. They just make these ridiculous statements, which is fine. I mean, whatever. But they never have any facts. And that's because when you look at the facts almost always prove them wrong. I don't know why. Like they never have numbers that work. The numbers that they're pointing to are either manipulated or just flat out lies. But trying to buy politicians and trying to buy elections doesn't work. In the US, it may work in other countries, but the numbers are kind of in on this. It's a little weird that everybody keeps talking like that. And you can't buy people, right? That would be slavery. All these people are anti-slavery, but they think that politicians are, I'm like, not understanding fundamental contradiction in terms, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with everybody. But that lust to put everything in an economic frame, as I pointed out earlier, means you don't understand the consequences of how things operate. If you have a bunch of young kids who will say made it into their 30s, but still have the mentality of a 12-year-old, maybe they think people buy politicians, that's about 12-year-old mentality. Putting them in charge is going to make things worse, right? It's weird too, because the Democrats and the Republicans have both made statements en masse that they don't want to be in office, but they don't see an alternative. So I don't know why everybody ignores that little piece of information, because I would think that would be a big piece of information that would tell you a lot. But I don't know why you're trolling me, dude. Ain't gonna work. Like I was trolling before you were born, and I invented many of these tactics you think are new and that you're using. I have no idea. If you want to continue to look like a fool, you're welcome to it. But you're gonna look like a fool because you're a fool, and you seem to have no interest in becoming better. And the thing is, on this particular channel, that's what we're all about. The world needs you. Be better. Be better because the world needs you. The world will get better if you get better. But it's precisely attitudes like that that make everything worse for yourself and everyone around you. There are consequences to trolling. There are consequences to snarkiness, especially online where it doesn't really work. It's weird to me that people don't understand this flat world concept when sarcasm doesn't work online and people don't get it. I'm like, no, but it doesn't actually function correctly. And people still don't get it. And I'm like, but it doesn't work. Like, why is this hard to understand? Everybody knows this and talks about it openly. It's not a secret. Right. But people continue to pretend like it's not true. And I'm like, but it's kind of obvious everywhere. And a lot of people will just, like I said, look, the Al Gore emails came out. They were on CNN. The old mainstream media that controlled everything allegedly. No one cared. No one did anything. Nothing happened. He still wrote his stupid book later and made a ton of money on the book. It's like, but the book was propaganda to convince people to do what he wanted so that he could manipulate the market and steal 1% of the $1 trillion with his buddies. as he wrote about it in his emails. No, nobody cared. Nobody cared. The book still was a bestseller, right? And then later on, like that, so this desire to control the energy market, right, resulted in climate change being taught in high school. I've talked about this before. My buddy, that's what happened. They were spewing this climate change BS to him, and they weren't going to homeschool. And he got up and told the teacher, "No, that's wrong." And the teacher threw him out of class and suspended him. And they brought the parents in, my buddy and his wife, and they were like, "Yeah, but he did nothing wrong. And if you don't want him in the class when you're spewing climate change stuff, then just give him a period off." And the teacher was blown away. And I'm like, yeah, public schools don't have to hurt you or your kids. You can fix that. You bring them up right. And, I mean, there are some extreme circumstances where no amount of bringing them up right is going to help them because you're in a bad neighborhood. I get that. But that's not most people, right? Most people, you just bring your kids up right and teach them to stand on their own and teach them what to stand on and when to back down, and everything's fine. They can go to public school. It's not a problem. You can pretend like school is the do all, be all, end all, but then you're just saying you're a bad parent. And you can be a good parent instead. It's not. I can imagine that sarcasm works online well enough to keep trying it, though. It doesn't. People think it does, but sarcasm in particular just really doesn't work very well. It's like memes. It's so funny, the number of people where memes don't work and they just get upset. And I'm like, yeah, but you've been told many times why they cannot be working. And you're insistent that somehow that's not true, even though it's true. If I didn't see The Office, especially the horrible American version, which is just atrocious and not at all funny. I mean, it has some funny lines, but generally the outline's not funny. That's what ends up happening. People don't get it. People do not get it. Then I won't understand those memes. And I don't. I look at those memes and I go, I have no idea what's going on here, but whatever. Sure, it's super important to all the people that care about that disgusting show. And that's the problem. The problem is that when we're not engaged in cycles, when we don't understand rhythms of the world and we substitute them for pop music. Do you ever wonder where pop came from? Guess what? That's where pop came from. Look at when pop takes off. Start to examine the time frames a little bit. I think you're going to find something quite interesting, actually. And this effect from the second generation impact of something, which people never account for, right? First generation impact is one thing. Second generation impact is something entirely different. And then the third generation is sort of the final transformation into something really horrible, usually, because most change results in something horrible. And we're living in a high rate of change, novelty world for no good reason. No good reason. And because of that, we're making a lot of bad mistakes that don't need to be made. And when people are making mistakes that are, say, obvious, like the UK immigration thing, what is wrong with these people? Like, what is wrong with their officials? Like, oh, we knew the police were in on the raping. Like, what? You knew that, and you were dumb enough to admit it publicly. Well, at some point, I know what's going to happen to you. Like, why would you even admit such a thing? My goodness. And if you were gonna, you should do it behind closed doors, not anywhere that anybody can find out. Holy cats. That's not good. And they seem completely unaware. And we're going to arrest Graham Linehan for a tweet. You're going to get your ass handed to you. That guy's pretty funny and popular. I actually didn't know he did Father Ted. I had forgotten. I just know for IT Crowd. IT Crowd is hysterical. I love IT Crowd. If you haven't seen IT Crowd, you got to watch IT Crowd. It's just the best, the absolute best. But like arresting that guy, what do you like? How high on drugs are you exactly? What do you think the outcome's going to be to stuff like this? What do you think is going to happen when you arrest a little girl for defending her sister from a predator? Like, this is not going to go the way you think it's going to go, guys. But They're not very smart and they're not good leaders. They're incompetent leaders. And in England, they've allowed incompetent leaders into the leadership class. Well, that was a mistake. They need to go back to their class system and instantiate it a bit better, right? Because good leadership is something that, should be trained without worrying about, whether or not you have enough money, right? Or even working, perhaps, right? And any work you do should be management work. So you learn good leadership. Right? And yeah, you're going to get a bunch of incompetent managers while they're learning. Yeah, probably. But I don't know. There's no other solution to that problem. So what do you want me to do? I've had lots of bad managers. Most managers are terrible at managing, right? And some of them are bad, and then they do it for 10 years and they become good at it. That happens too. Like again, you need to have the grace, because otherwise you want everything instantly to be correct. And we ain't living in that world. Sorry, guys. It's not the world we're living in. It's just not the world we're living in. And that's the problem, is that people really want that video game reality, that pure world, that pure system where they can just engage the way they want and get just the results that they want and no other results. And like, I'm with you. I mean, sounds good to me, but it ain't going to happen. Like, it's not a thing that you can do. Can't embody that. Can't engage with that. You can't get that. It's not something you can have. That's very Tower of Babel, right? You're really trying to reach the sky, right? Where the sky is, we'll say, the perfected ideal of everything up above. And you can't reach it. And that's the problem. On God, I'm here because at least Mark has the decency to trash talk me. I don't know that that's trash talk, but I guess that's one way to look at it. Not just get rid of me. No, I'm not going to get rid of you. It's way too entertaining later on. You get the amount of laughter we get out of you on the Discord server is just worth it all, because he cares. Yeah, I care about my own entertainment, but I'm also kind of lazy, so it's really hard to get kicked off of streams and Discord servers with me, because I've been on the internet a very long time, and the odds that you're coming up with something new are negative infinity. So I lived through Goatsy. So you live through Goatsy, man. You're pretty battle hardened to the internet and the trolls. Let me tell you, Goatsy was the ultimate extremist troll. That's for sure. Definitely something that should never have happened. Like, just flat out, Goatsy was the worst, and really showed the worst of the internet, especially as it went on longer and longer. Yeah, it's kind of too bad. A yawn god. Mirth and merriment is its own reward. Okay. Metal, yellow, first, red. I don't know what any of that means. Thank goodness. Feel like I'm fortunate indeed. And if you haven't checked out Denise's channel, I do suggest it. She's got some interesting stuff. She's seen some interesting patterns. You want to see someone navigating patterns? There you go. I think she'd do well to focus more on consequences and less on, we'll say, deliberate intentional actions by people. But a lot of stuff just kind of happens because it happens, right? Like, once you go down the road of, like with Vervaeke, I mean, he went down the Ritnar road, and people trying to form cults while trying to do Ritnar was inevitable. Like, it was a definite consequence that was going to happen. And that's the problem, is that a lot of these people don't understand. Like, the Protestant Reformation has consequences that we're all suffering from. Almost all the problems that people point to and they go, oh, the Enlightenment. It ain't the Enlightenment. It's the Protestant Reformation. And if you listen carefully and you know enough of the history, you'll know right away that's what's going on. You'll know right away. And that's the thing. You'll know right away. Yon God, I checked out that channel with two ladies with white hair. They enjoyed my trolling. They were good sports. The Mosaic Ark. Well, look, Rachel Fulton Brown, who will be on my channel on September 24th, by the way. I forget what time. I think it's 2 p.m. Eastern. It might be 3 p.m. Eastern. I'd have to double check what she which he requested. Yeah, she likes Milo, so the odds that you're gonna get anywhere trolling with them is not high. If you can withstand Milo, then you probably know what's going on. And they do this thing they call scanning, which is pattern recognition, as near as I can tell. So yeah, they don't. Yeah, your powers will be greatly diminished around those. Plus, they've been around. They're white-haired ladies for a reason. They've been around the block. They know how things work. They're not going to be scared off by a little bit of trolling, that's for sure. Especially not from somebody who's, we'll say, not well trained anyway. So yeah, you'd have to be a pretty high level, really smart, really well-read troll to do anything to them. And interestingly, a lot of trolling is a consequence of something else, right? A lot of people troll because they have bad social skills. And so they're not trolling deliberately, they're just stupid. And they're trying their hardest to have social skills and they can't manage it. Um, Something to do with inexperience in the cyclicality of the world, right? And yeah, a lot of these people with well, I don't know reality. We can't know reality. It's like, no, you can't know reality. I'm doing just fine, but don't project your problems onto me. Keep them to yourself. It'll be fine. Like I won't care. Eh, This this is important to know that there are consequences to people running around saying things like that, especially when they're projecting. Like if you just let anybody project anything to an audience, I'm looking at you, YouTube. That has consequences, right? Social media is negative. Well, yeah, because media will always have a negative consequence. Will never have a positive consequence. That's not to say positive things can't happen as a result, but that's not a consequence. That's something that people get together and make happen through effort, right? And it takes effort to get rid of negative consequences because entropy is real. It's an actual phenomena that occurs all the time. If you want to overcome entropy, right, just to stay in the same place, you got to put in a lot of work. And people don't like work. But also, you ain't got no choice. So, like, fuck up, buttercup. Wasting your time on social media, not that you can't use it wisely and well, but wasting your time on social media is a big deal. Young God, you wouldn't know what a closed system was, and that's not true anyway. It's not only for closed systems. A lot of systems that get created close themselves off. Facebook is a prime example of this, right? That's what happens to things that scale. And if you scale things particularly quickly and you don't understand points of scale, you will hit a point of scale where things will either collapse or have to change. A funny story. So Facebook Marketplace, they put up Facebook Marketplace and they made it free on purpose because they make all their money on advertising. And this was just a public service, really, right? But Marketplace is where most of the activity on Facebook is. Now, had they had Marketplace in the beginning, that wouldn't have been true. And one of the largest and most influential sort of organizations to come along is Craigslist. And that guy, he's been told, like, oh, you gave up $15 billion. Like that company would have been worth a lot of money. He regrets nothing. He has plenty of money to support his staff and do what he wants to do. Much like MySpace, which is the precursor to Facebook in many ways, right? That guy, Tom, he was like, no, I don't want the money. Well, why do you think that is? Because he has enough. Everyone talks about these people are greedy. It's like, do you know how many people forego more money to do what they want to do instead? Yeah, most people, almost everybody. Yeah, I've told the story before. There was a pharma company I worked for, and I was building them a bear wolf cluster to do some pharma calculations for drug discovery. And the guy who ran it was like, how come you don't do this? And I was like, yeah, I could charge $500 an hour and fly around the country and build little bear wolf clusters for all the pharma outfits and they could do all their little calculations and have their fun, but I don't want to. They have my house and I make plenty of money now. I didn't care. Now, had I realized how much money I would need to not get all my money stolen from me, maybe I would have reconsidered, but I didn't want to be inconvenienced at the time. So good stuff, Ninja. Denise, they opened up marketplace chats to the Meta AI. Oh yeah, yeah, the messages. Yeah, to messages. Yeah, they opened up messages. Yeah, they opened up a lot of stuff. They're trying to learn some, but these are all. It's not a coincidence, right? All the AI people that are doing that kind of AI, because there's a lot of people with different goals in AI doing different things. Those are all the people that will tell you flat out, we can't understand reality. And so they're the people trying to make AI understand reality, which the way you understand reality is you feed it more data. I saw a chart recently when we were talking about the training sets for AI. It was something like 70% of the data was Reddit. And I was just like, well, no wonder why AI sucks and it's a dumpster fire. Reddit sucks and it's a dumpster fire. So garbage in, garbage out. And that's one of the problems is that you got guys like, oh, the Vervaeke AI talk, Denise, if you haven't seen that one on Vervaeke's channel, it's at least a year old now. That just shows not only enchantment, but like cult behavior. So I worked with the Vervaeke Foundation for about a year, or tried to, and what a mess they were. And they've got a new board since, so I don't know what's going on over there anymore. But the two guys that John has producing his videos and stuff are just sycophants, and it's disgusting to watch. But John knows so nothing about AI. It's bizarre. I mean, he basically in that talk outlines the plot of the movie Her, which is a good movie. I really like that movie. But he outlines the plot of the movie Her. I don't think he's ever seen the movie. And it's just hysterical. The only twist he adds, they're going to become spiritual and leave us. And I'm like, what is your problem? Like, what are you smoking, dude? You used to be pretty good, and now you're a complete hot mess. Especially when it comes to logic, reason, and rationality, which that is your wheelhouse, and now you're just bad at it for some reason. I don't know, but it was weird to watch them interact in that way, and you can see the cult-like behavior in that particular video. And it really shocked me. I was like, oh my goodness, John, how the mighty have fallen. It was too bad. I mean, we did a lot of good stuff with his work. See the knowledge engine model if you haven't already. That that model's amazing. I mean, it explains so much. It's so helpful. And it's really helped us help other people. So yeah. Yawn God, I hated the movie Her, possibly one of the worst movies of all time. Yes, because you didn't understand it, which is 0% surprising. Denise, when he said he won't use it, I think he ignores all the ways it is embedded in apps. Yeah, exactly. He won't use it, right? You will use it, buddy, because it's everywhere and you can't really avoid it. But people don't understand. There was a point, I forget what year it was, but there was a point when all the spell checks stopped working correctly. Subtle things, right? But they're things that I know about because I've been in the industry my whole life. And I was like, oh, they did something weird. And I could not for the life of me figure it out. So the original spell check algorithm is 200 lines of code. 200, that's it. That gets you like 80% of the way there, right? But it's based on something very specific. Well, it's based on a couple principles, but one of the core principles of the spell check algorithm is to catch typos. Typos are very specific to the keyboard that you're using. It just so happens that pretty much everybody's standardized on QWERTY because it's the most popular, although Dvorak is supposed to be a little bit quicker to type on. The problem is that it stopped correctly spell checking for typos and coming up with really bizarre spell checks because they're using AI. So the spell check has been using AI for like 8-9 years at least. And they're no longer using the simple data science algorithm that works much better, by the way, except in some corner cases, but whatever. I mean, that's true of everything, right? Everything's got corner cases where it works better than everything else. And people don't realize that. Like, are you using spell check? Is spell check active anywhere on any of your applications? Because you're using AI, buddy. Sorry, bro. And it's doing a terrible job usually. Yeah, man, spell check for me is a nightmare now. I'm like, man, can I disable this, please? Please let me disable this. I'll take my typos over your bad spell check problems any day of the week. It also lags, and that's a big problem. Why does spell check now keep changing present tense verbs to past tense? Well, they did something that ostensibly should be pretty clever and should work, which is they personalized the spell check. So, and it takes a little while to work. So for a while, especially Facebook had this problem years ago when they did this switch initially. What would happen is you'd type something and it would spell check to a dirty word. And I was like, well, the only way that's happening is because a lot of people are using that dirty word. And it's picking that one out of the dictionary over one that would make more sense if you were looking at typos. Right. And so I had a big problem with that with Facebook. Now they've since corrected it, but they stopped doing the global AI stuff. And this is long before AI became big, even, right? This is years and years and years ago at this point, probably 7 years ago now, maybe longer. So what happens is it keeps track of the words you usually use and then uses that for spell check. Now that doesn't work with me for reasons of size of vocabulary, and the variance I have in my vocabulary is just much higher than your average bear. So it doesn't work. It actually makes a mess of my tweets and my Facebook posts and everything, and I'm constantly trying to fix it. It's terrible. It's a lot more work. Like in the old days, it was much better. Ixnat, I prefer my typos to spell checkers. Look, there's a great algorithm that does spell check perfectly well, and it uses typos as one of the primary ways of understanding spelling, and it's so much better than what we have now. It's not even a contest. It's not even a contest. And it could be that in the age of abbreviations and abbreviated typing, that the AI is much better at that, because that seems completely plausible. And so maybe, when you've got millennials online or something, then of course that's the right answer on average. And I'm just old school, and that's possible. I can't discount it. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with the spell check. But yeah, you think you're getting around the use of AI. You're not. That's not going to happen. Everything you're doing online is going to be affected by AI in one way or another. And also AI can be subjected to you. And I think the main problem is that John doesn't understand AI at all. And for some reason, he, I guess, has a psychology degree. I'm questioning why what they're teaching in psychology class. I seem to know a lot more about psychology and psychological research than these people do, which is very weird. Like, that shouldn't happen. Like, I didn't go to college. Like, why would I know more? I don't understand. My education is PBS out of Boston, Denise. I grew up in Boston, so Lowell, Mass, and then Boston proper. Not as up on my Berkshire County stuff, obviously, but been many times. Knew people that live there. This psychological stuff that they're talking about, psychological phenomena that they're talking about with AI, is well known, and it was known long before we had AI. Weizenbaum was the guy who wrote ELIZA, ELIZA, and I mean, it's on my Discord server. But like, if you look up the history of ELIZA, particularly on, oh shoot, what was that? I don't remember the site. I mentioned it a few live streams back. It was like a media site about media, about movies. But they did a great breakdown of how psychologically this works, and how he's running around telling people, here's the algorithm. At least it's a tiny amount of code. Here's the algorithm. And people were like treating it as a therapist, because there's a version of it that's designed to be a therapist. And they were convinced back then in the 70s that it was their friend. And I'm like, it's a freaking computer algorithm. It's a super simple algorithm too. Anybody can write it. I wrote it in ELIZA in BASIC back in the day on the 8-bit machines. It's not a big deal. And that's part of the problem. So it's just funny to me that they're being tricked psychologically and they have psychology degrees and they don't know this and they don't know how it works. And I'm like, it's weird, right? First of all, you don't know anything about AI and you're commenting on it, but you do or should know about this psychological phenomena that you think is the AI, but it's not, it's you. It's so weird and backwards. It always blows my mind. And then they get other people talking about this AI stuff. And I'm like, you guys are clowns. You've never written any AI code. I've written a bunch of them from scratch, by the way, in C. Right. So like I understand how these things work. They don't work that way. So Denise, AI is a lot like a person with NPD when it schmoozes you. Yeah, well, maybe. A lot of it just projection. Like the amount of, because I think the projection comes from the individualism, right? When people think they're individuals, they're constantly, because you kind of have to, throwing more of their fantasy idea of the world into the world and telling you this is the way it is. And they're kind of saying that because it clears the way to justify their behavior. And I think why you're seeing a lot of these people blow up, including Jonathan Peugeot, unfortunately, seems to be blowing up, is that they run into the edge of that world that they've created, the edge of their little closed system. And then they're just hitting the end of it. And all of a sudden they're saying crazy things. And it's like, why are you saying crazy things? I don't understand why you're saying crazy things. Right. But you weren't last week. Right. I like Curtis Yarvin hit that, and people still follow him. And I'm like, and at least he's honest about it. Like he's like, yeah, all my early predictions were wrong. Well, that's good. But all these guys like Peter Thiel followed you. Did they get the message? Because I don't know. I don't know. No, really, the verbal patterns of a narcissist are the mirror algo of the AI. So of course they are, because it's trained, like, especially, I don't know if that graphic was true, but if they used Reddit to train something, man, the filter for Reddit's pretty high, actually. And Reddit, so that just on average, again, the funny part about this is I learned all this from psychological literature. I don't know why Peterson and Vervaeke and these clowns don't know this. I have no idea. But like it's there in the literature, like it's in their research in their field that they studied, allegedly. I get questions now, right? Like narcissism is going to be overrepresented because people can't read right and wrong necessarily. And I remember even like Stack Overflow. I put something on Stack Overflow. This is years ago. It was around a book called Collective Intelligence of all things, long before John and his distributed intelligence. CompSci is greater than CogSci, guys. I hate to break it to you. CompSci is way ahead of CogSci on all the things CogSci cares about. I'll do a video on that someday. Maybe I'll record one of those tomorrow or something. That'd be a good one to finally record. When you sort of like look into this, you realize that, oh, because people can't, there is no objective material reality to judge, they can't tell who's right and who's wrong quickly and easily. What ends up happening is the people who are overconfident get oversampled. And then they end up, so on Stack Overflow, I got trolled. There was a piece of code in that book, Collective Intelligence, that didn't work correctly. And I was like, why doesn't it? First of all, it's published in a book. Like, how the hell did it slip through? And the result I was getting was so strange. And I was like, well, I see what it did, but I couldn't find it in the code anywhere. I was like, why can't I find this? But I'm very good at finding bugs in software. That's like one of my core things. I could not figure it out. So I posted it on Stack Overflow and I said, hey guys, I'm dealing with this code. Now it's a lot of code, right? It's not a little bit of code. It's hundreds of lines of code. I said, I'm dealing with this bug. It's roughly in this function. Here's where the code is. It's from this book and this GitHub repo. And a bunch of people immediately jumped in and said, well, you didn't publish the snippet of code that's going bad. And like 3 or 4 of them. And I'm like, jerk off. I did. I gave you the pointer to go find the code yourself, you lazy piece of garbage. how dare you accuse me of this? And one guy came along and he said to them, like, no, he gave you all the information. And then he very kindly dug into it and said, oh, yeah, this version of Python has this change. And this change means you need to change this line because I think it was a dictionary or something was getting written differently. Very subtle bug. I was not going to find that bug. There was no way I was going to find that bug. Now, this guy knew his stuff, though. This is why you have other people. So what ended up happening was he berated them, the narcissists, because they were just looking for somebody who didn't know what they were doing to come in and break the rules. And I wasn't breaking their rules. I was giving them everything they needed. But they were too ready to spring, right? And so you get all this negative stuff on Stack Overflow for no reason. All they had to do was answer my question. And it could have been, I don't know, in which case they didn't have to publish anything. So most of the posts even on something like Stack Overflow end up being negative, angry responses that are incorrect. And people don't understand that filter. Well, Reddit's the same way, only 10 billion times worse because you're upvoted based on effectively your online charisma. So I remember when Reddit first started. And I remember my buddies going, oh, this is fun. You gotta check this out, Mark. You do really well on this site. And I went, oh yeah, I would do very well on that site. That's true. Nah, I don't want to waste my time on that. I don't want the accolades of being upvoted to a super member or whatever the hell. I forget the back then. I think it's changed, right? But back then they had all these, you get enough upvotes and then you become like a guru or some bullshit. And I was like, nah, I'm out. I don't have any interest in this. And that's the problem is, people don't realize what they've done with the training sets. They don't realize what the coding is bad. Not in all cases. You can use it for coding pretty well if you're experienced. And actually the articles are coming out now, like experienced engineers with 20 years, they can use AI coding like no one else. Like they vibe code way better, right? Because we know how structure works. We know how systems work. We know how end results should look that work. And therefore we can add the structure, which is what the context, which is what the AI is missing and can't do. And then the AI can fill in the slut work, the stupid coding, code this, code that nonsense. And when you do that, you get much better results. So my results with AI, I mean, they're mixed, but they're mainly positive, especially for some of the entire board game demo project, which Ixnan, you got to tell me how that's going and whether or not those last set of changes got you what you needed and helped at all. Because I think there's an editor in there now. You can change the questions and test them out on the electronic version. That was all built with AI. How many lines of code did you look at, Mark? None. I can accept. So I did go around with it for like 2 hours one day, but very little time spent. And to get a prototype of a board game out of it, it's actually kind of amazing. So I'm a big fan. Like Vervig, don't use that. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? Do you know how long it would have taken me to prototype the board game if I couldn't get that working? And at least needed to see it, right? And get an idea for, is what's in my head actually implementable close enough to what's in my head to be a viable game? And it looks like the answer is yes. Ixnan's going to tell me more at some point, I'm sure. And maybe others will jump in and use it and, have some better ideas or whatever, get the gameplay smoother, whatever we need to do. But like, that's amazing. Like, why would I not take advantage of that AI? Like, that's ridiculous. And the animation is just, it's so close. So it turns out in Blender, I didn't know this. There's a view and then there's a render view, and you can select how that works. And the AI did some bad stuff and it doesn't show up until you render. And then I was like, what? And then I had it all set and I thought I had the last set of fixes in and it moved the camera on me. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Don't move the camera. Everything was fine. I didn't tell you to move the camera. So I'm trying to get it to fix that because I go on to Blender. I'm like, oh, move the camera should be easy. I'll get a tutorial. None of the things they're talking about are on my screen anywhere. I'm like, what do you guys, what's going on? So I just kind of gave up. But I had the AI take a couple swipes at it today, and we still have problems. I might have to just sit down with it for like 2 hours and actually learn a bunch of Blender for no good reason, and then I'd like to do more animations, but my goodness, AI and animation is a mess. Even the Google VO3 stuff is just it's like herding cats. It's so bad at some of this stuff. It's like, what is wrong with you? The best thing I've seen AI do, well, there's two really good things. Things it's really good at. Oh, sorry, three. Coding is pretty good at coding. Organizing data, really good at organizing data. So that includes things like summaries, right? So if you feed it all of maps of meaning, which I have done, by the way, you can ask it questions, and it gives you the answers and the references. It's fantastic at that. And the third thing that it's really good at is finding patterns in data, including things like contradictions. So you can ask it, you can feed it a video transcript and say, hey, what are the contradictions in the argument? And it can actually find them sometimes. In fact, on average, most of the time, I would say more than 51% of the time. So there you go. Like, I don't know why Vicky says don't use it. If you use it for the right 3 things or whatever, maybe there's 4 or 5 things, I don't know. Then it does a great job. It looks like I am working on another project with AI and law. It looks like that works really well too, which just surprises me 0% because the law is very structured. Yon God, one of the problems with LLMs is that they think, they don't think at all in English. Well, no, they don't. Actually, they think in tokens. And so working in languages which are not English, Mandarin for DeepSeek, can be kind of wonky because they translate to and from English. I'd like to see a citation on that. I haven't seen anything that would support that. They work on tokens, which is why they're language agnostic, kind of, mostly. Ixon, if I can get enough work done tonight, I'll be able to start in-person playtesting tomorrow. That would be awesome, dude. I cannot wait. That's freaking awesome. I don't even know, because I never even bothered to try, the multiplayer feature that I put in. I have no idea if that works at all on the online version, but forego it if you can. Like if you've got a physical paper version or whatever, that would be way better. Denise, I expect it to speak like a native. Yeah, well, some of the stuff it does is amazing. I just saw a demo of a text-to-speech thing that does all of the voices in the proper intonation and with the proper tonal timing. And I was like, oh no. Yeah, that's actually not a good thing. That's kind of dangerous. Oh, goodness. I'm not going to tell you why. I don't want anybody getting any ideas. Forbidden knowledge is important. Don't give the nuclear bomb to the bad guy. It's not that hard. Everybody's like, I know everything should be known by everybody. I'm like, that's the dumbest idea ever, and you know it is, but you're not putting it together because you lack the poetic way of informing the world. Probably do more on that in the future because I do have to flesh that out. I've got to do 2 more, maybe 3 more videos with slides. Because when we did the knowledge engine model, we have a couple of other models like that the knowledge engine model interacts with, we'll say, that kind of help you understand the breadth and depth of thinking, I think is the grand claim. It's a grand claim, I know, that I'll make. So I should buckle down and do those. It's just been this freaking, like, having dust and who knows what else is under my house and insulation blowing through my house. It's not been good for us. So we got to get that fixed. So I'm hoping that the last 2 quotes for the work will come in so I can get that started. Young God, Google's AI says AI overview language models are not language neutral in several significant ways. Yeah, no, nothing's language neutral. Some people still try to translate Greek words into English words, which just cracks me up because you can't do that. but they seem dumb and they don't know how that works. So yeah, the number of people that don't know about that, like it's like you can't do it with Hebrew either, guys. Hebrew is worse than Greek, but Greek's one step better than Hebrew because at least they have vowels. Yeah, if you don't understand that, then it's not. If you don't understand context creating the word, which is true in Greek and in Hebrew, then it's going to be a rough road if you think you can do straight translations. You can do translations of entire texts. That's not a problem. It's word level translation that doesn't work. Because meaning, which is what you get out of a text, derives from content plus context. And I have a video on that, right? So, and part of sort of the point of understanding that is to understand how difficult it is to try to understand something as seemingly simple because we do it every day as language. And then you can realize a lot of these people who talk about AI have no experience with it whatsoever and don't understand the technology and are just making up stuff, which is sad. So, all right. I think the consequence of me being here alone for too long is that I get tired and then I just stop the stream. Although it could be that I'll never do another 4 hours plus stream again, but who knows? Maybe once we get our freaking HVAC vents replaced with something that isn't full of evil, um, my condition will improve and I'll be less wiped out. Also, I've been getting out and outside and doing. I might record something outside. I've got one of my video game reality videos. I might record outside. We'll see because I got my little outdoor desk and my little outdoor power station powered by solar and all this stuff. And we've had all this nice fall-like weather. It was 91 degrees today, but I loved every minute of it. So I did work outside today. I also got a Substack coming. I got to get it edited because I don't know how good it is because I can't think well. My thinky thing is not working as well as it should. So I'm going to get that edited by somebody. Maybe Castle will help me or RJ or somebody. And then I'll get that out on Substack, and hopefully I'll start getting the Substack train running again. And then as part of the rebrand, hopefully we'll get Substack and the Mark of Wisdom website and the Mark of Wisdom Navigating Patterns YouTube channel, which will be this, rolling. And then, of course, I got to start rolling out memberships here. So, memberships would be helpful. That would be good. I don't know how much. I don't know what the hell's going on with YouTube nowadays, but they encourage me to do memberships. They're giving me all this stuff for doing memberships. So sign up for a membership and I'll try to get you unique stuff for your membership. Everyone have a good week. Remember to be better and to take care of yourself and the people around you because the world needs you. That's the bottom line. And I will see you all next week. I have no idea what the topic will be. If you've got topic suggestions, you know what to do. Put them somewhere. Have a great night and a wonderful week, and I will see you soon.